Just making sure it worked. Hey, everybody. What's going on?
What's going on? Where is what's going on?
Welcome to another Let's Talk Paranormal evening. I'll do my best to not sound so bad. I don't know what I got going on, allergies or cold or something. Anyway. So come on into the live and comment and talk to us about your paranormal experiences. We're going to talk a little bit today about our haunted Shasta Dam and Monolith video and project we put out. So come on in and let's talk about all of this stuff. I want to know if anyone out there has had any of their own experiences, especially if you got any locals around that have had experiences at Shasta Dam or the Monolith, or just in general in the local Shasta County area. Let us know. Comment. That's the only way we can talk about it.
I'm laughing because Anthony likes your smooth radio voice.
I know it's not so smooth now because I got something going on in my voice box.
Yeah, so anyways, we just decided to jump on here and see if anybody will jump on with us. We just finished our last project, which was kind of quite the undertaking. Just for me, because I'm, obviously I keep saying I'm still learning this stuff.
I didn't have to do much. I just kind of sat there and talked. She did all the work.
Yeah, he sits behind me, like right here. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm just watching.
I'm watching what she's doing on the computer when she's editing stuff, because I'm editor stupid and she's editor smart. So I'm just watching what she's doing.
That's what happens when you have a married team.
One of us has to be the smart one. One of us has to be the stupid one.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but
I don't know. I guess you have to have the yin and yang balance. I'm okay with that.
Anyway. So yeah, we just I guess we'll just talk about the video that we made, Shasta Dam and the Monolith. So I don't know how much everybody knows about it. Well, if you're in California, you kind of know the beginnings of California. And how all this started. We did a previous video on the builder of Shasta Dam, who also built the Hoover Dam, and I think we've kind of talked about that before. So yeah.
So what made us actually want to do Shasta Dam and the Monolith? What sparked that? I don't really remember.
Well, I think because we kept hearing stories about the dam, and then because I grew up here. So I heard all the stories of people being buried in the dam, after they passed, not alive. I hope that would be kind of freaky. Mm-hmm. But, so yeah, it was always like people thinking that, they just let them fall in there and they couldn't get them out because the dam was so big. So they just cemented right over them. But that story's been around for a long time. So that was one reason we decided to do it. But then because of our past investigations and learning about the Native American tribes up and down California and a lot of the tribes that were moved, and, it kind of sparked even more interest. And then people kept telling us that, other areas of the lake, which in the video, if you've watched the video, the lake is 365 miles all the way around. I had no idea the lake was that big.
Crazy to think that you could walk 1 mile every day of the year and it would take you a whole year to walk around the lake.
Yeah, a whole year. That's a long time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Unless you were really motivated.
Does leap year affect that?
Probably, maybe.
I don't know.
So maybe, I don't know, how much does that take off? Half a year?
I don't know. Well, like a couple days, I guess. One day.
I don't know anything about leap year. I don't even know why we have it. Kind of like daylight savings time. But anyway, so the lake is like 365 miles all the way around. It's like 500 plus deep. So it's a big lake, a big man-made lake. This was not a natural made lake, obviously, because they came in, all the settlers came in, and then, obviously the bigwigs came in and saw potential for California to be this massive, what do they call it in that one cartoon? Where the ants all want to go to, like where all the food is. It's like,
oh man, I know what you're talking about, but
the
I don't
utopia. So it was like a utopia farming. They saw the potential because every year apparently every year all the valley from that point of the dam on down would get flooded out every year. And they saw potential for crops and farming and agriculture and all that. So it was like, hey, we built a Hoover Dam, so let's build this dam here.
Well, yeah. So because they had the seasonal rain, they realized that it is very fruitful during that time of the year to bring the water. So why not do something and have water flow year round? It might have something to do with wine country too. I mean,
yeah,
that part of the California coast grows some pretty good wine grapes.
Yeah, there's a lot of wine country down even below Redding.
Avocados, olives.
I think the most of it is
oranges. I mean, everything.
They grow almonds, avocados. Yeah, just about everything. But I think almonds are a big thing.
They are. If you drive up and down the I-5 corridor,
olives and
Central Valley, almonds. You get almonds or almonds, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
Tomato.
Yeah, so there's a lot of farming there.
Yes. So it kind of makes me wonder how all the tribes survived if they talk about all this flooding. Because you see pictures of it and it's massively flooded. And we flood now as it is, even with the dam being how it is. When the dam gets too full and they let out a ton of water, which we did flood this year. Not as bad as like North Carolina or any place like that. But we flood pretty good. So
think about all the infrastructure in the economy it created, not just with the water and farming, but the need for the infrastructure to build all the subsequent like small little stations and the water canals and all that stuff. It was more than just the dam, but the dam is where it started. I mean, they say it's like the gateway to California's water system.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you look at the dam. Well, when you look at that area prior to the dam going up, it just looks like a little creek. So then my friend asked me today, it's because like, hey, did you watch my video that we made? Because I'm pretty proud of it. I think it looks pretty good. We did a good job about telling the story. And he's like, how did they divert all the water from the creek? Like, oh, I don't know.
I don't think they really diverted the water. Otherwise, they just let it fill in.
I know. I was trying to think that, but they had to stop the dam. They had to stop the water at some point. So what did they do with all the water?
Well, in our video, there is one specific picture. I don't know where it falls in the timeline. I can't remember.
Let me see.
But it shows they've got two of the sides of the dam mostly built, and then you see the spillways are kind of in the middle there. And you can see water flowing through one side. So they obviously had a way to figure out how to get the water to go where they wanted it to. I mean, think about the times too. It's not like they had crazy technology, so they just moved earth.
Yeah.
I mean, how else are you going to do it?
They diked and dammed.
It's not like you could put a big steel plate in there.
Diking and damming.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
I think I just saw it. I don't know why this popped in my head, but when you said bigwigs, do you know why that term bigwigs is a thing?
Because women used to wear really big wigs back in the day.
No, it's because the royal families back in England wore those big crazy wigs.
I forgot.
Right? So they were like the big wigs.
I was close.
Making the decisions.
I was close. Oops.
I really don't know if that's true. It's just a good guess.
No, I have heard that, but yeah, I don't.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, so you can see that is, they did obviously the middle part. They were slowly moving their way outward.
Yeah, so they were actually building from the sides in, because this was the last thing. This was the last portion to go in. according to the other pictures that we had seen. So it was a big undertaking, kind of like building pyramids. Like, like what did they really use?
A 9.5 mile conveyor system, the first of its kind. That's what they used. And then those big buckets. So in some of the other pictures, you can see like this big, I guess it'd be a pyramid like tower.
Yeah, that was the tower.
And that tower was where they had all the cable systems connected to the buckets that were coming from where they were like mixing the cement. And when they flooded the lake, all they did with that tower is basically chop it off. So on years when we have droughts and the water level recedes in Shasta Lake, you can actually see the top part of what we call it the top part because that's what we see. But I think it's like the midsection of that tower. Man, my voice sounds weird.
Well, that's the tower right there.
That's the tower right there.
Might not look that big, but it's actually huge. If you think about, so right here, oh, you can't see. I don't think they can see my mouse. Can they see my mouse? Probably not.
Know. Can you figure it that way? No.
It's right there. But to the right, yeah. If you look to the right of the picture, you see like this little skeleton, and actually, that's a huge piece of equipment right there. So yeah, they top that off, and then every summer or every other summer when we drought, you see the remnants of that.
I mean, think about just the scale of the picture. I mean, look how big that structure that they've had built up so far. That's almost the top, and I mean that tower is pretty tall.
Yeah.
So at the deepest portion, which I believe is at the base of the dam on the lake side, is what, 512 or 500 plus?
Something like that. So what does this have to do with paranormal? Well, everything. Has everything to do with the paranormal. So you're kind of getting a little history about Shasta Dam and why this is relevant to the paranormal. So Brian knows more about hydroelectric water sources and stuff like that. And then everything that happened just around building the dam. There is a lot of paranormal folklore stories, people from stories who think they've seen or experienced stuff on the lake itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of nerdy when it comes to the technology and things like that. So I understand the basics of the mechanics of the dam, but she's much more in tune with the paranormal side of what's going on with all of it, much more than I am. But I mean, I have, we live in this area, I work in this area, and I have had conversations with the security that works there, and they have kind of told me that 100% they hear footsteps, shadows, and paranormal activity, the creepy feelings, the weird spots of like cold breeze and the bowels of the dam when there's no windows, right? So, but obviously they're not going to come on camera and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, you can actually go on a tour if you ever get up to Northern California and you go see the Shasta Dam. Definitely look into doing the tour. They have a little theater where they give a history of the dam and all the people that were involved, and then you can actually go down inside the dam and take a tour, and it's pretty amazing, to think that this was built in the
1938 when they started. So, and then 42, 43, something like that was when they finished. They finished early because the lead engineer, Frank Crow, was kind of a genius with everything. There was also a push by the government to get done as quick as they could because they needed the power to run the factories to help with the war effort during World War II.
Yeah, the World War II started during the making of the dam, and they actually finished on time, believe it or not, which is pretty amazing considering.
Yeah, I wonder if you got a bonus for finishing earlier than what was projected.
I think he was kind of humble because when we did the investigation on him, you'd think he had this fancy headstone going, "Oh, Frank Crow, the builder of Shasta Dam," and it's a basic little flat headstone.
It's just your standard kind of U.S. military,
Yeah, wasn't what I was
Marker.
expecting. It took us a second to find the marker. I guess we expected it to be more impressive.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I don't
And
think
didn't even say that he built the dam. It just said engineer.
Yeah.
Frank Crowe, engineer. That was it.
And then his wife is buried next to him, and that just says, wife of Frank Crowe.
Yeah, no props,
Nothing
no
special.
nothing.
We actually cleaned it up a little bit because it was overgrown and everything. So obviously, there's not a whole lot of family or people that are maintaining it. But it was kind of cool to find, and I thought it was going to be harder to find.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
I mean, it only took us, between the 2 days that we had time to do it, but maybe 30 minutes
maybe
of driving around that.
Yeah,
we finally found it.
At the most, yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool that we were able to find that. And it's crazy to think that this guy that, had all these genius ideas, and he, was the lead engineer that had control of building both the Hoover Dam and Shasta Dam, decided to retire after he built Shasta Dam and make Redding, California his home.
Yeah.
And that's where he spent out the last part of his life. Yeah,
because it was really beautiful up here. You have creeks and mountains and just all kinds of stuff up here. You have hidden lakes, not so hidden lakes. We got waterfalls up here. We have cliffs, if you like cliff.
Creepy cemeteries.
A lot of creepy cemeteries. Yeah,
I think, now that I think about it, I believe that is probably what started my interest when we visited that video that we have. So go check out our channel. It's, was it say Scary Bat?
Yeah, Scary Bat.
Harry Scary Bat? Or
Harry Scary Bat. I don't know if the bat was Harry, but it could have been.
Well, I didn't see it. Not live. But that was the moment that really kind of sparked my interest as to Native Americans being, exhumed and relocated when they started this project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to go back to what does this have to do with the paranormal? A lot of stuff. So you have to kind of take a step back before the dam was built and how they decided they were going to pull off this majestic, job, because it's pretty majestic if you think about it. So prior to that, you had all the Native American tribes all the way from, why can I never remember that? The Pitt River tribes all the way up to Mount Shasta. And we actually have quite a few future projects that's going to be based around the dam. So all these were very sacred areas to the tribes. And they did all, most of the Native Americans in these areas they were hunters, they were gatherers, they relied on the salmon fishing, to feed their tribes and stuff like that. So when they came to build the dam, well, actually, I think take a step back farther than that, you had all the gold miners come in.
Oh, yeah, because that whole area, the town of Kennett and Coram and all that was based around not only, there was the gold rush that brought the people here. And then when they realized that there's more than gold, like copper.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole area was, a copper boom, right? Yep. So they were copper mining all up and down the hills up in there. And we found out it's more than just in Kennett. I mean, they had copper mines all the way up into the hills, all along all the arms of the rivers that feed into Shasta Dam.
Right. Yep. You had a lot of mining. The mining in Ingot, that's more, was that copper mining or was that mineral mining?
I don't think that was copper. I think that was something different.
I think those were minerals. Yeah. So we went to the east side for a little while that we didn't put in this video, but yeah, there was a lot of different types of mining going on, but the main thing was the copper and the gold. Yeah. So there was a huge gold rush here. So when they came in, I think Kennett and Coram were created.
Shoot, I keep coughing. Yeah, Kennett became a hotspot because of the copper mines, right? Yeah. And then, as usual, when the railroad comes in, when you have transportation, you bring people. So the railroad comes through there, and it just boomed into, a heavily populated area because of that. And it's literally walking across a bridge to get into Coram, which was where the smelter was, right? So, whenever you have a mining town pop up, close by is the smelter, right? And that's also where they, that's where the big wigs make their money, right? So actually, the town of Quorum is under the lake too, and people really don't talk about that much. You don't want this?
No, I was giving you a drink just in case you're really dying. That's the wife kicking in, trying to take care of people.
Thank you. So the town of Quorum's under there too, right? But then there's currently you can go to Quorum Ranch, which is it's named Quorum Ranch because it's in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
But Quorum Ranch wasn't actually where the smelter was. Quorum Ranch is on the other side of the dam, and you can go there, and it's like a vacation spot and stuff. But that whole area was all part of the town of Quorum. So I think that ranch was kind of like where the bigwigs had their ranch. They established their homestead there, and that's they're not going to put their homestead right next to their smelter, because actually, at the time that was a really polluting process, right? And that's why it got shut down, because of all the pollution.
Yeah, and there are still mines they're still trying to clean up. Just in Keswick, for example, they have the mine way out there, the Iron Mountain Road, that mining or area or whatever it was that they're still trying to clean up.
Yeah, Iron Mountain Mine it's not an active mine, but it's actually a Superfund site because of the pollution. So there's federal government has billions of dollars invested in paying contractors and people to clean it up, and there's still people going into the mine to clean it up.
Yeah, I think I've pulled people out of there before.
And actually, when the car fire came through in 2018, it burnt so hot in that area that it actually started burning inside that mine.
Yeah.
And they had to bring specialty crews and, military people and hazmat people and all that stuff to go in there to put those fires out.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had Kennett and you had Quorum, but then prior to that, you had the tribes that were farther up that canyon, and that would have been the I can never think of that.
Well, it goes all the way up to Mount Shasta, right? And that's kind of like, when you think about it, we started our project with the dam and the monolith, and how the monolith was connected to the dam, right? So the paranormal journey there is, can we connect paranormal activity at the monolith, which is 9.5 to 10 miles away from the dam, because that was all part of the project. And then it's kind of spawned into, when we started learning about the Native American stuff, that the Native Americans, like their whole tradition and their whole kind of flow path went all the way up
the Pitt River and all the way
to
up to
Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
Right, which is supposedly like the most paranormal place in
the world.
In the world. That's what people say. But I mean, you got everything from
Bigfoot, Lemurians, aliens, lost tribes. Who else knows what else is out there? And
it can be connected to the Anunnaki with the city inside the mountain, and so it's like it's all connected.
Yeah. So when they finished the dam, they had to fill it up. They had to fill the lake up. So the people that were still left there, there were still some dam workers and some miners that didn't want to leave, and
those dam workers.
But they finally, they stayed till the last minute, and then they gave the tribes very little time to move. I want to say it was like a month, but I don't even think it was that. I think it was like 2 or 3 days, if not less than a week. So not. And there was some cemeteries there, so not everything got moved out of there. So now you're flooding out Native American land. You've already messed with moving people out of their resting places. You've left people in some of those resting places. So now you've disturbed that whole energy in that area, in that land. Not only are you messing with culture and sacred places, you have moved people's bodies.
The natural balance of the order, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it, and I think when we were talking to some local natives, they were telling us that there was 26, 27, something like that.
There were 29 different tribes.
That's what it was.
And then there was, who knows how many different tribes, because I don't think or how many cemeteries, because I don't think they really know. But we didn't dig in, in this story, we're trying to be respectful to the Native Americans, because it is still kind of a hot topic. So there were quite a few people moved. and not moved. And they were all moved in different places, so they weren't even moved together. So who knows how many families were separated and how many tribal people were separated and had to go to different places.
And when you talk about kind of messing with the balance of nature and, spiritual forces, I mean, not only are you moving remains of people that not all of them got removed, you're covering up sacred sites, things that were sacred to people. You're also adding in kind of some tension between the tribes, because at that point, the federal government gave some land to the different people, but not all of them wanted to live there, right? Because you have people that were used to hunting and fishing and wild game and living off the water people. I believe that lady told me that the Winnemem Wintu were water people. And the spot that they gave them, which is called the kind of Toyon area. Yeah. There's no river or
no creeks
that flows through there, right? River. So you got water people that are now having to live not next to water. So a lot of people didn't want to do that. So now you also have some unrest and kind of some political discord between the tribes themselves when it came to recognized and unrecognized and all that. So now you're adding more tension and stress to that whole situation. And you're also moving earth,
Yeah. So a lot going on there, so why wouldn't there be paranormal stuff left over? Why wouldn't there be, people coming back or still there that are, I don't know if they're necessarily lost, but they just haven't left. Maybe those spirits refuse to leave, Yeah.
And I don't think a spirit should be, why would they leave? Right. But they can't kind of roam their land because it's underwater.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And the sacred sites. I mean, how can the spirits be hanging around the sacred sites if they're underwater?
Well,
nobody can go to those sites to try to connect with their ancestors.
But I think they come from the earth, because not only are they water people, they're earth people, I mean, I'm assuming, I don't have facts on that, but I would assume that they're in tune with the earth, with nature, with the environment.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, you're right. But think about this too. It's like, we can go visit the cemetery and visit our loved ones and put flowers there and talk to them and do those things. But they can't.
Yeah.
Because it's, whatever, 300-400 feet under the water.
Yeah.
Right. So walking to the edge of the shoreline at the lake is different than being able to walk right up to your sacred site where your ancestors, kind of spirits and souls are lingering.
Yeah. So when we were starting to do some of the research on the paranormal side of it, obviously we weren't going to get anything out of the security guards, except, it's haunted. We just started reading through some stuff, and there is an old folklore, and I never got that confirmed by the local tribes, because when we went to talk about it, they were kind of like, yeah, we're not talking about that. So we went ahead and talked about that just because it's very interesting, and there's a reason that I wanted to talk about it. So this part I can show you this part of the video.
Shout out to Alejandra. Thanks for popping in.
So let's see if we can play this. We're also learning how to do this, so we're just kind of playing around with this tonight. I don't even know if anybody can hear it. Nope. We might not be able to hear it. Tell me if you can hear that. If you're... Oh, I had the volume.
The legend lives on. Some believe
Let's go back a little bit.
Shasta Dam.
Jennifer, thanks for popping into the
about building and flooding
Jenny,
out
nice
Native
to see
American
you.
land and all their spiritual
We're
places
official.
that they would do their
You're
celebrations
here, so we're
and things
official.
like that. So it's pretty interesting.
Local folklore tells of a native tribe whose sacred land was threatened by the Shasta Dam. In desperation, they performed a fire dance to summon a legendary horned serpent, huge, scaly, with long teeth and twisted horns. The beast is said to have risen from the Sacramento River to frighten off the builders. Though the dam was completed, the legend lives on. Some believe the serpent still dwells in the depths of Shasta Lake, guarding the lost land in silence.
One of the unfortunate.
So that's the kind of the story. I kind of probably put a little too much other stuff over that, but so the story is that the tribes were angry and they went and did a ceremony to call on this horned serpent that would take care of this land, this forgotten land. And the horned serpent would forever stay in the lake. So,
I mean, I guess it was initially to scare off the builders.
Yeah, it was initially to scare off the builders.
The builders were successful. So now what else? Scare off people that are tromping around on or floating above your sacred sites, I guess.
Wakeboarding above your sacred sites, yeah. So then over the years out there, people would claim to see shadows move across the lake. They would claim to see bright lights underneath the water. Some people have claimed to see a scaly serpent come up to the water, but not quite out of the water, but to the surface of the water, and it would kind of scare them. There's actually an article on that. But in defense of that, so because Shasta Lake is so deep, we have sturgeons. There's these bony bottom feeder fish, and they're not good fishing, I'll tell you that. They're bony, but they're bottom feeders, and they live more towards the deepest part of the lake, and they get as big as like Volkswagens. So when the lake gets real low, sometimes people can catch them, and sometimes just people see them more often. So are they seeing the serpent, or are they just seeing sturgeon?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Could be both.
You can share the screen, right? See if you can open another tab and Google, a big sturgeon catch or something in Lake Shasta, and let's look at a picture and see if it can be mistaken for a horned serpent. And one of the thoughts that popped up to me was that some of these stories are what, articles where we read about people that have so-called seen what they think might be the horned serpent. It's very remnants of like Loch Ness. Wow, that thing's huge.
Yeah, that's pretty big, but it's not the biggest fish that has ever been seen. I think the biggest one people have saw was the one that was as big as a Volkswagen. Would that be an image file? I think I have to save it.
I think you can open up that other screen, right, where you have us.
I might have to remove that one.
Yeah, we're working on this, so bear with us. Oh, we're working on this, so bear with us.
I think I would have to stop screen sharing and come back and share screen again.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, because it's a different tab.
Yeah. Oh,
there we go.
So This is just a small sturgeon. So
that's a small one?
That's a small one. So
is it like normal size?
I would say this is probably average, if not a little bit bigger, but a lot of them get as big as Volkswagens. So they could literally swallow you. But since they're bottom feeders, unless you're dead, I'm sure they're going to leave you alone. I don't think sturgeons mess with anybody, but they're not good eating, I'll tell you that. So you can see, that kind of there's no horns on there, but if you were just catching that.
See if that was coming up and there's the back was kind of breaking the surface of the water.
Yeah, it would be a little scary. You could probably call it the mini Loch Ness of Shasta Lake. So yeah, this is probably what they're actually seeing, but people said they've been bigger, so.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, but there are good fish in the lake if you like trout and rainbow trout and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that big sturgeon fish.
Wow.
Dude, I wish I could find the Volkswagen one that was.
Can you put us back in the middle?
Oh, gosh, I can't do that. There we go. All right.
So pop on a comment and let us know if you've seen anything like that in Shasta Lake, right?
What am I doing? So we also have our own little Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, so there's been people that, I mean, there's accidents on the lake every year, right? And we're actually getting ready to come into lake season with summertime coming up. But there's people that go missing on the lake all the time. They find the boats, just fishing boats circling because people fell out of them. And, people just go missing all the time on the lake. So, how many people do you think it is?
Over 19 or 20 that have never been found. It's probably more than that, but at this point in time, it's a little over 20 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so that's kind of crazy that there's, I mean, you can, the ocean, it makes sense, right? Because it's so big. And some of the huge lakes, like Lake Michigan and, those big lakes, I get it because they're like oceans. But Lake Shasta is a big lake, but it's kind of small compared to like those big lakes. So, man, to not be able to find somebody, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and our lake can get really low. It's been really low before. So why you're not finding, remains, at least bones or skulls or stuff like that is kind of surprising. Because when the lake gets that low, everything that's been flooded out comes up. There's parts of Kenneth you can still see. There's some of the old train tunnels that you can see. Some of the highways you can still see.
What's the thing that was all over the news they found last time? It was like a military boat.
Oh yeah, they found a military boat.
Yeah, like a landing craft, like World War II landing craft, military boat. I don't know if you call it a PT boat. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with.
But like, think of the movie Saving Private Ryan in those boats, and then the big ramp falls down. I think that's what it was.
So my theory is, I can't find any more pictures of. I would have to go way back to the 70s. I don't think I'm going to find that photo. But yeah, so it kind of goes back. Is there a horned serpent, and is that the reason why we have all these missing people? And they're seeing things. They're seeing shadows. They also hear Native American drumming, like in the distance, and we've heard that when we went, on the Harry Scary Bat video that we did. I heard that Native American drumming, and it's distinct. It's not like, somebody's driving by and bumping their loud, obnoxious
it's
stereos. It's, what it is when you hear it. So, a lot of people claim to hear that. And then we have all these people missing. Kind of makes you wonder.
Come in and comment and tell us if you've heard anything like that or seen anything like that. So pop the comments on and let's see if anyone is.
Did I turn them off? Oh, there they are.
Man, it's getting worse.
It's allergy season.
Yeah, I know, but I'm trying not to scare everybody away.
And the last time that we were in here, because I worked in a 100-year-old building. This is my hair salon that we turned into the studio. The last time we were sitting here, we heard somebody walking down the hallway behind us. And there are spirits in here because I'm an empath and I know they're here. But I've never heard footsteps before. I just always feel like they're following me down the hallway.
But you also had one of your, I don't know what you want to call it, an episode? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
You had a moment where you could sense it.
Yeah. But they're in here. Often. They're quiet. I think it's just residual stuff at any rate. But anyway, as far as the lake goes, so you have to remember they flooded out all the Native American land. And if you go, when the lake gets low and you go farther up into the Pitt River area on boat, you can find all old relics. There's old cars from the 30s and 40s still underneath the lake out there. So
yeah, someone was telling us that the last time it was that low, they went up one of the arms and they found their little village, the homestead area, and they found like you said, the old cars, an old schoolhouse with a flagpole, stuff like that.
Yeah,
talking about this building we're in, being older and a historical building and having energy, we're not that far away. Technically, where we sit right now, we're not that far away from the monolith.
No, we're not. And it's just a couple miles down the road.
Yeah, it makes me. I mean, I don't think this area was where the conveyor belt passed over, but I mean, pretty close to where we're at.
Yeah. I'm going to try to pull up this video again. So if I have any questions, want to know where we're located, because I know not all of you are from Reading. I see a couple of you. But if you have any questions, there's a lot of, we get kind of jealous about people that live in the Midwest and even more towards the East Coast, because you have all these cool places to investigate. I know they get investigated again, but we kind of decided that we're going to stick to more of the local things around our area that hasn't been investigated.
Yeah, a lot of just like to go, to those hotspot areas, but we're trying to find the areas that are not super hotspot areas and figure out what the history has to tell us about the paranormal and what the paranormal has to tell us about the history.
So we got to in this, we just did small investigations. We didn't get real aggressive or anything. Well, we never really get aggressive anyways, because we just want spirits to come to us. We don't want to have to call people out. But we did get to kind of unusual voices come through that we focused on more, because we were able to go in and I didn't mean to share that so soon. That were kind of relevant to the dam, and one was relevant to an incident at the lake, which I was a little bit surprised. See if I can get back here and find it.
You're looking for Freddie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's got to be pretty close to here.
Let's see if we can find it here.
So that was AM before. Now I'm scanning FM.
Okay, here it comes. So some of the stuff that we were getting, it was like, some were like, you could trip, which would kind of be relevant to that time, because, you're dealing with rocks and you're crawling all over the place, and you got all this heavy equipment. And I'm sure it was fairly fast paced when you're talking about a 9-mile conveyor belt, and it's going roughly 2 to 3 miles an hour. Doesn't seem like a fast speed, but it is when you're dealing with rocks and conveyor belts and stuff like that. We never really confirmed if anybody got caught up in the conveyor belts or anything like that, but I would imagine there's quite a few injuries. As far as deaths on the dam, nobody was buried in the dam. We've confirmed that didn't happen, but they did have 14 deaths at the dam, but it wasn't from falling or anything like that. Most of the deaths there actually were from foot rot. So if you think about wearing boots and cement all day, probably just sucked your feet dry and, and then being wet in the water and just that back and forth thing. A lot of them died from infection.
Well, think about the time period too. I mean, so, they started it before our country entered in World War II, but then World War II, a lot of the soldiers had the same issues with their feet, right? So the technology of the boots was just basically, a piece of leather sewn to another piece of leather.
Yeah.
Right. So there wasn't much protection.
Yeah.
I really doubt that the sock technology was
we didn't have sweat absorbing cotton socks back then.
Just some basic, kind of.
And I'm pretty sure my great grandpa worked on the dam. And I want to say, I'm going to have to confirm this with people, but my understanding, but I was a little girl. So sometimes when you hear one thing, you think it's this way, but it's really not. But I thought he fell off the dam and broke his back. I know he broke his back because he couldn't work anymore, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with the dam. And
hey, Anthony, what's happening? Thanks for popping in.
Hey, Anthony. So the majority of them died from infections and stuff like that. And then there was like 89 injuries. But what shocked me that there was no memorial for these people that lost their lives building the dam. I was a little surprised by that. Now there is on the Hoover Dam, but not on Shasta Dam.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous. Like the Hoover Dam got memorials, but our people here in Shasta, California, I guess
we're just disposable. We don't matter.
Maybe they had premonitions of the state being the state, so they're just like, we don't care.
Yeah. So I want to play this. And sometimes when you have a spirit box, it's not that easy to hear everything. So a lot of times we have to go back, and I have to go over this. Sometimes it's not very hard to hear it. You just got to get the volume turned out where you can actually hear what it's saying. 'Cause sometimes like we're messing around and it'll say something and we don't always catch it, but we know they're leaving something for us.
You have a natural knack to hear this stuff. It takes me like 4 or 5 times listening to it to try to make out the one syllable. And once I get that one syllable, the rest of it I can hear.
Yeah, and there's like so many other voices that we could add to this, and this is where the work comes in, to where we have to be very diligent that we're just not trying to hear something. But when you start getting things that are relevant to the time and to the questions that we're asking, you know that it's not in your head.
And that is the reason why the history is so important to understand, because that's what we're trying to do, is connect the history to paranormal and the paranormal to history.
So in this little clip, we were asking, are there any dam workers left here? Are you wandering around? Who'd you work with? Things of that nature. And then this is what we heard. Hopefully you can hear it.
One of the things we captured was a voice asking about Freddy.
So I want to make a little comment about spirit boxes here. You do hear radio, right? AM, FM radio. So every once in a while you hear, a voice coming clear, or you'll hear a smidget of music or something like that. But it's very discernible. It sounds like the radio.
Yeah.
Right. But what we heard there is nothing on the radio you're going to be listening to that sounds like a robot talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. So, yes, you can be kind of tricked by radio stuff. So you really have to be in the right mind frame also when you do this.
Yeah.
So, but that was very impressive. I mean, that was clear as day. What about Freddy?
Yeah. So, and that was after asking about certain people. So, let's see if we can get past.
On me that maybe there's a connection.
So we went back and
did
researched.
a little research and digging on anyone named Freddy or Fred that was connected to the dam or the dam construction.
No pun intended.
And we did find that there was a Fred Gillen that was a worker that was connected to the dam.
Yeah, don't judge me. I said his name wrong.
They've got documented evidence of him and a photograph. We don't know.
So yeah, so he was I want to say he was look at your face.
Man.
God, I'm
creepy.
good. I'm so good at this. So we were able to connect this Fred Griffin to the dam. He not only was he a worker on the dam, I believe he was a part of some of the engineering on it. A little bit of engineering.
I don't remember that, but
I don't know if it was just input or maybe his knowledge of the area. We're not really sure where he came from or what his specific job was. But
he had to have been somebody significant enough to where the archive saved his picture.
Yeah.
Right. You got to imagine all the stuff that they collected over the years that is sitting in the archive.
Yeah. And one of the plots that was that they covered up with the lake was the Curl Cemetery. And when he passed away, which could have been 1945-ish, we're not really sure. We didn't really get a clear.
We don't know if it was I don't think it was 1945, because that was like after the dam was flowing water. Yeah. The lake and everything was working. So I'm wondering if that's like
it had to be before
when they moved him or reburied him.
Yeah, because they flooded the dam, so they had to move his plot into what they call the Central Valley Cemetery here, and this is where some of the Native Americans in the Winneman tribe were moved to. And he was moved to or near a local family called the Popejoys. And then we went to the local museum, we were told that the Popejoys had actually adopted some of the Native Americans so they would be safe.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting story.
Yeah, because they, had white in their lineage, right? So they weren't, by them adopting or bringing into their family some of the Native children, it was able to protect them from some of the bad stuff that was happening, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could go on forever about stories like that, which is super interesting. So yeah, it was interesting that we got this "What About Freddy," and then all of a sudden this guy pops up in the history of it, and we were able to connect that voice to potentially that history.
And that kind of is amazing how when you do an investigation, you think it's hard to find this stuff, and it's not easy, but it's amazing what you can do just by Googling something. So 30 minutes of going through that stuff, we found that picture, and then we were able to confirm it, and that's actually in the archives. So that's pretty cool.
So we're going to go to another voice. So not everything is going to be Native American related. Not all of it was dam related. Like we said before, every year people die on this lake, and it kind of goes in waves. Right now, because Memorial Weekend's coming up and it's Easter vacation, we get all the college kids that come into town, and they all rent houseboats, and it's just a nightmare. They come up here and they get these big old houseboats out on the lake, and they're drinking and just being out of control. And we lose 1 or 2 people every year from the colleges. I mean, in the last few years, it hasn't been as bad as it was in the past. But they started really putting their foot down on these kids. They did
hammer down on them because of the environmental mess they were leaving behind out on the lake. But, it was so bad to the point to where the colleges would actually require there to be a medical standby boat paid for by the schools to float around out there. And those kids would permanent marker numbers on their body so that, that's how, because they're not out there running around with their IDs and stuff like that, right? They're just on the lake. Phone numbers are written on them, numbers. I mean, it's so weird, but that's how crazy it is out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's been everything from drownings to murder to overdoses to over drinking, just you name it, it's been out there, So yeah, they did kind of put their foot down on it. So it's mellowed out a little bit, but that's the history of the lake. Not only do we have all these things that happened prior to the dam and during the building of the dam, now you have all these people on this lake, not only disappearing, but coming up here and losing their lives because they're not being responsible. So
some of them are truly accidents, though. It's not all of it because people are being irresponsible. There is accidents that happen.
Yeah. Because they're drinking a whole lot and being irresponsible. So, obviously most of you know that we're first responders, and obviously we're not going to talk too much about this because we can't. It has been a while, but we still kind of got to keep
We'll explain it the best we can. I'll try to.
So we moved from the monolith, came out to the lake to see if we could get any Native Americans off the lake or any of the miners out there. And we did get a few things, not really noteworthy, but we got a few things. But then we were asking, are there any spirits out here that have a message for their family members, or do you have anything to say to them? And this is what we caught. And it was the most clearest EVP.
I don't know if that's
spirit box voice that we have gotten. We've gotten some pretty clear spirit box voices, which is hard to do sometimes. But if you're just in that right environment, it's just there.
Ryan recalled that.
So let's go back a little bit. Kind of set that up a little bit better. I may have already asked the question. So sometimes it takes a second for spirits to get enough energy to respond.
Freddie, did you work on the dam? Did anybody work with a Fred or a Freddie?
So that was an intelligent answer. Did anybody work on the dam? Yeah.
Did you say, yeah, you worked with a Freddie? What was that?
Is there anybody here that had your homes sunken by the lake? Is there any spirits of people that lost their lives in the lake? You want to say something?
So there's a lot of people that came out and went fishing in this lake and they never came back home. Are there any spirits of those families? Do you want to say something to your loved ones?
Ryan recalled that a few years ago, a young teen fell in the water and tragically drowned not far from where we are sitting.
So then he does say hello again a couple of minutes down, but I'm not going to torture you. If you want to go see it, you can go watch this whole video and fast forward.
Process to do these investigations. It absolutely is a process.
So right away, I knew that was a young male voice, but I didn't think about who it was. And then Ryan was like, wait a minute, we're not too far from where this accident happened. And it's a very tragic story, you know, and unfortunately we do lose kids on the lake more often than we'd like to see. So that's always a tragedy.
I mean, I can say that in the moment, it didn't dawn on me what was going on. I see and experience a lot of stuff while I'm on duty, right? And since I work in this response area, you know, we did go on a call where there was a young male that lost his life, and we, you know, did all the rescue efforts and, you know, pulled him out of the water. And, you know, my partner and I pulled him out of the water and did everything we could, but it didn't dawn on me till I was watching her again, sitting behind her, watching her click on stuff, editing, that it's like, oh man, that's got to be only about 300 yards from the boat dock, or the boat launch, I should say. And that's where that accident happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but yeah. And that voice would be, you know, would make sense for the age of the young man. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of like a unexpected, because we weren't even going after stuff like that. I mean, and we generally don't. We're not going to go over.
I'm not going to dig deep into that, but it also brings up that connection of that kind of what we do with that whole pursuing a spiritual awakening. Some of these things is not only finding the paranormal, connecting it to history, but it's also the intent that we have as investigators, being pure and honest with what we do. And by doing that, we potentially could have some personal things happen.
Yeah.
You know, you've had a lot of personal things happen to you at investigations. So yeah, that's like a whole nother aspect to it. That's like for a whole nother live conversation.
And I feel like it's just the way we approach our investigations. Obviously, we're not like some shows where we're jumping around and doing cartwheels when, you know, something goes off. We're actually, because we're first responders, we're always on that, just that. We're able to cope in weird situations and not respond to stuff. But I think because the way we approach things, I think we're more likely to get spirit contact.
I would like to say that it would be easy for us to be like the movie star that's walking away with the explosion and then not react.
Yeah, right.
Because that's kind of how we are. But that big of a thing, we're going to react to it. And I might say some bad words. The only time I said a bad word in any of this, though, was the scary bat.
Oh, yeah, the very scary bat.
So go watch that video. But yeah, to bring up your point, we don't have any kind of crazy, startling reactions to things because
not yet.
because we are, you know, we kind of live our life in a perpetual, you know, stress ball.
Yeah.
Right. Not only at work and stuff, but I mean, we got 3 crazy kids at home. So it's like, you know, what can happen now? That's just par for the course, you know, but which is weird. I just thought of this, right? I'm like the most startleable. Is that the right word?
It's easy to startle him.
Very
That's what he's
easy to startle me. Like I'll be walking down the hallway. She'll come around the corner. And I mean, that's going to be probably the next video that goes on YouTube somewhere.
Sorry.
but it happens very easy. And my guys at work, my firefighters do it to me too. But when I'm doing this stuff, it's not like that, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. It's just. So anyways, we just wanted to jump on here tonight and, this is kind of our little practicing we're doing, not that we don't want to share stuff with you. We're still kind of learning how to do all this and share our stories because I think they're interesting.
People come into the lives and comment. We want to hear from people that have had these experiences, and it doesn't have to be local to our area.
No, not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
I think we're trying to get on here and just do this as much as we can to just talk paranormal, open it up for anyone that wants to say anything. If you have a paranormal experience or a story that you want to share on kind of a deeper level than just making a comment, there you go. At the bottom of our screen is our website. We have a contact form on there. Yeah, we got this new audio thing that we're still trying to figure out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think Cash has the same one, Anthony. We didn't copy him. We just wanted it to sound better, but then we're like, oh, this is so cool.
So contact us. Go to our website. We have all of our social medias there. We have the contact form that will send us an email. If you want to share your story, we'd be happy to bring you on. I guess we have a podcast kind of. It's more like a conversation. But we want to bring people on and get into deeper paranormal experiences.
Yeah.
So
there's a whole bunch of topics that we'd like to touch on, and we will eventually over time, I think one of them is near-death experiences is one that is really intriguing. And hopefully someday soon we'll be able to get to do that. But
we'll get that one going. And then, all of the paranormal conspiracies, UFOs, Bigfoot, all that kind of stuff. We got some people that we can get on to talk about that, which will be kind of a fun conversation.
Yeah. So yeah, our next adventure is the Pluto Caves, and we're probably going to be checking that out this weekend. That's a little bit nerve-wracking just because the stories are much bigger, and I'm not going to give it all away, but there has been a lot going on up there. And I know, people talk about the 411 podcast, or
the TV show, Missing 411, I think it is. It was a book or an article, and then it turned it into, I think Discovery Channel did a TV show.
Yeah.
But they talk about the guys that were climbing Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I'm having a hard time not coughing my guts out here.
It's allergy season up here. We're like full of pollen right now.
So these two buddies are climbing Mount Shasta, and they're above the tree line, right? So they're just in the rocks. There's, it's summertime. And the guy in the lead turns around to look at his buddy, and he's just gone.
Yep.
There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere that he could have gone. He backtracked to try to find him, see if he fell, something happened, and just gone. And to this day, they never found him.
And it happens quite a bit up there. Most people come back, but I know there's a lot of people that haven't. And, without giving away everything that we want to talk about on our next couple of adventures, we're going to kind of save that information because it's actually very intriguing and kind of creepy. I don't know. I got to get my double barrels out so I can, fight with aliens when we get up there.
It's going to be an interesting journey, and hopefully we'll do that at least the hike to the entrance of the cave this weekend.
Yeah.
It's only a mile, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Yeah. We'll see. We're taking the kids, so
carry at least one of the girls.
It'll be the little one that gets us in trouble because she's such a.
I'm not worried about her. She's got enough fight in her.
Yeah. She'll probably egg it all on.
But there's a lot of interesting things, and it's all kind of backtracks and connects to this project, which is what brought that whole thing up to us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting how all the paranormal is connected.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar with this area or not from this area, in the video, if you see that big white mountain in the background of the dam, that is Mount Shasta. It's huge. And that's not even the whole mountain because obviously in the early 1900s, that was the last time it
erupted. I don't remember when it was. There's a black and white picture of it.
Yeah. So and then we have Mount Lassen that's on the east side that the whole top of that mountain blew off way back in the day, like late 1800s, early 1900s.
That brings up another point. Everyone talks about all the hot spots on the East Coast, but it's like we've got this kind of mystery of Mount Shasta. We've got Shasta Lake and all the kind of paranormal sightings and folklore. And then you've got Mount Lassen. So you got 2 volcanoes, the dam, flowing water, all the energy. I don't know if you took it on a map and if it makes a triangle or not. I have no idea. I just thought of that right now. But there's something to be said about the power of nature and the elements within the earth.
Yep.
In between 2 dormant but big volcanoes.
Yeah.
And a lake with a massive dam.
Yeah. So yeah, we live in a very interesting place. So anyway, well, thanks everybody for being here. We appreciate it. Go like, share, and comment on our YouTube channel.
Shout out to Shasta Historical Society for hooking us up with a bunch of pictures and cool stuff.
Yeah, Gabriel Lee is our Shasta historical,
our resident historian.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. I feel like we maybe kind of jinxed him a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of stories behind that, but sorry, Gabriel. But no, he's awesome. He loves history, and anytime that we're in a pickle and we need some information, we go to him. So we'll get there and get more people to talk and get more stories. And it's just, I don't know, for some reason people are pretty tight-lipped on this side of the world a little bit. So,
that's okay.
But we'll get there. We'll get there. So thank you for coming tonight. Bye, Anthony.
Alejandra,
Bye,
Jennifer, Anthony, thanks for popping in.
And we'll see you next time. Oh, on the 27th, we're doing a live podcast. So the 27th, it'll be at 5:00 Pacific Mountain Time.
Pacific Standard Time.
Whatever it is.
There you go, Anthony. See, we're doing stuff on the West Coast now with the West Coast time.
Yeah.
None of this weird Central Texas stuff.
Yeah, we're on the P side. So we're doing a podcast at 5:00 Pacific time, and it's called Our Haunted Home. And, we always give little snippets about how we got into all this, but I don't think people have we haven't put the whole story together for people to really understand why we started doing this and how we got into it. So it's a free-for-all. Ask whatever you want. We'll talk about ghost adventures if that's what you want to talk about. I know there's a lot of stuff going around about ghost adventures right now just because they're entertainment. But there's no question.
We'll get pretty deep into our personal experiences at our home and how that led to and still is a big building block of what we're doing now.
Yeah, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on in our house. So, and it's not us. It's not that we're bringing stuff with us. It's not that at all.
That's the big part of the story that opened the door into our paranormal adventures.
Yeah, we didn't ask for this. Dang it.
Kind of.
We just walked through the door.
I mean, once it happened, they were like, we didn't say no.
Yeah, we didn't say no, but it wasn't really an open invitation. Anyway, thanks everybody. And we will see you hopefully on the 27th and see some of you in other places.
Yeah. All right. Until next time.
Toodles.